Why is it that some people transform their lives and other people who desire it don't? And I've done tons of thinking about it, and started to wonder if there's something that needs to happen before, something that needs to, some kind of conditions need to be in place for people to be able to shift into a transformation gear, if that is right, So I don't know what your initial response to that is.
Okay, so what are my thoughts on are there conditions? What are the conditions that lead to transformation? Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe even a step before that is, why do you think some people can't do it? As a coach, I'm sure you have this experience. I talk to so many people who say, I want change, but they don't, it doesn't happen for them. It just
Yeah.
doesn't seem, and I know for myself in the past, I've desired transformation and it came eventually, but I've been in that space of just not being able to break through and do the things I say I desire.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think there is always the distinction of, do I really want that? Do I really? And just because I think I desire something does not mean I actually do desire it. Um, and sometimes it's our blind spot, right? So I think one of the things that I've seen quite a bit is one of our blind spots is that we don't actually want it. We don't truly want it. Um, we think we do. We really, 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 really think that we do. I remember when I was saying I'll do anything to get my business off the ground. I'll do anything, whatever is required. And an opportunity opened up in which I would be able to get the support, mentorship, and coaching from an individual, or from Jacob, Sensifi. So from Jacob, to help me grow and build and do that. And then, but I was like, oh, but I can't afford it. I'll do anything. I'll do anything possible to help my business up. I'll get the mentorship. I'll get whatever support I can. As soon as the opportunity arises, I'll do it. Nothing will stop me. And then something happens, and I go, oh, but I'll do anything but this, right? And so that one thing was actually what I had to work through to transform myself, and it was my beliefs around money.
Okay.
Right. So in that actual space, so it was that one thing that was getting in my way, at that moment in time, was also, I thought, well, if this didn't exist, then I would do it. But in reality, I had to work through that.
Yeah.
And in that particular space, for example, of being able to invest in myself to be able to make that growth, in this particular context, was also the area that was stopping me from growing and building my business. Because if I'm not willing, for that particular circumstance,
Yeah.
because I wasn't willing, I was so struggling with, how do I do this? I can't afford that. It was also the exact same space in which other people were coming to me at, right? People wanted to come to me and they really wanted to work with me or to do it or to make it happen. And they're like, oh, I would do anything. I would love to, but I can't afford it. And so it's like, and I accepted it. I was like, I totally hear you. I get you. But in reality, just recognizing that it was a story that I was telling myself, but perceiving it as reality.
So, not to just kind of lump it in under one category, but is it fear? Because when you first started to talk, I thought, because that whole not wanting it enough, because sometimes when I'm working with a client, for example, it's hard for them and me as the coach sometimes to determine, is it that they don't want it enough, or is it that they're just scared? They're scared of what it means. And I've experienced that in my life. And so I don't know if you would put the money story under fear or something else.
Yeah, that's a great, yeah, I think fear. It's totally fear.
Yeah.
It was totally, totally fear. And what's interesting as I recall back on it, So, well, to kind of even shift gears, but just what comes up for me, which is so fascinating is, so sometimes, I was before I've done what I've done now, where I am traveling and I train in Aikido, train in martial arts and doing all of that stuff. Um, I was a middle school teacher in America. You know this, taught in America and did that. And then I was totally depressed, fell apart, and it's like I can't do this. Like this is a horrible way of existing. What do I really want to do with my life? I want to become a ninja. I want to move far away, train in martial arts all the time. And I had moved to Japan and doing that. And what blew my mind about it is that people will hear that story. And I remember at the time people hearing it and being like, wow, that's so courageous. I can't believe you did that. And I remember just being like, I didn't take any courage at all. There's no courage to this. Like I just like what sucked is waking up every day and going to this shitty ass horrible job that I despise. Like I'll do anything other than this. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and there wasn't. And when I recall it, like that was transformation. Um, and in that context, the fear, the pain was actually existing in my present moment.
Mm.
And so I just wanted anything I could to remove that. Um,
Mm.
and so it's interesting, right? That the role of fear. What do you think? What do you think the role of fear plays in transformation?
Well, it's interesting because I had similar responses when I decided to quit my job and buy a one-way ticket to Thailand. And people would say, aren't you scared? And I would say, I'm more scared of staying. My soul is dying in this country and in this job. So for me, a bit like you just described, the fear was of staying the same, not of the unknown in that scenario. But
Huh.
but I have experienced fear of the unknown. But what I was thinking as you were talking is because I've done some thinking about about this subject because I'm a bit obsessed. But is this idea of do you need to believe that there's something better, that transformation is possible? Like for me, I knew that there had to be more to life than this. When I was
Yeah.
in that situation, I just knew it in my bones. And I think some people, well, I wonder if some people just don't truly believe there is more. I don't know. What do you think?
That's a great, it's so fascinating to me. So if I'm kind of dissecting what we're looking at here, right? So in your context, you left the UK and then you went to Thailand because you knew it was actually the fear of staying in your present
Yeah.
circumstance. So you moved on. And then for me, it was the exact same thing. It was the fear of the present circumstance, right? But what's interesting about it is that so in that context, we essentially like quote unquote we're courageous, right?
Yeah.
People call us courageous, and it's like, but in reality, we don't feel it because we're like actually it took like I wasn't afraid at all because what I was stuck in was so horrible
Yeah.
or painful. What's interesting though in the context of what I was talking about before is that the fear was the fear in those other contexts of when I was looking to kind of go to entirely new levels with my business um, was I was afraid of the change, right?
Okay.
And so, and
Like what it would mean or what it would require from you, or maybe both.
and yeah, I think what's so interesting to me because if we really look at it, and it's exactly what you're saying, there's exactly what you're saying. This belief of that there's something better
Mm.
is that I know for me, people would be like, "Well, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to go to Japan, and then you're going to do like, how's that going to all work?" And I'd always be like, "I don't know, but I'll figure it out."
Mm.
Right? It was like, I don't know, like, but I'll figure it out. And the thing is that the real fear when I was looking and thinking about do I work with Jacob? Do I not? How do I do this? Blah, 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 blah. The real fear had nothing to do with the money. They had nothing to do with the money, had nothing to do with Jacob, had nothing to do with any of that. The real fear was, what if I do this and I go for it and I still can't make it happen?
Mm.
Because if I knew without question that my life would be better as a result of making the decision to spend the money, it's a no brainer.
Mm.
It's just like, well, duh, like, of course I'll do it. but and so that comes down to this, definitely, without question. And at the end of the day, the reason I chose to do it was because I believed in that I can make my life better as a result of doing this. That was
And
greater.
and just
What's
to clarify, the it is investing in the apprenticeship with Jacob.
in this context?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, and I would use it in the sense of, when I recently went to Europe and I traveled there, and it was like, oh, do I go there or not? And I was kind of a little bit unsure about it, and there was a fear, right? And the fear, when I think back on it, is the fear that my life is going to be worse as a result of that decision. And sometimes it's more intensified.
Yeah, you just made me think when I too was on the verge of like investing with my apprenticeship with you, and it was actually the fear, not the fear that my life would stay the same, but the fear that my life would change for the worse. I mean, I remember when we first embarked on coaching, I was like, if I'm successful, then I'll lose control over my day, over my schedule, over my time. I'm gonna be stressed and all of this stuff. I had a fear of being successful because there was a somewhere inside of me this idea that maybe it would be worse than being where I am right now, which is just kind of, comfortable. And well, it was more than comfortable. I was living on a tropical beach in Thailand, so it was pretty cool. But yeah, so going back to the original question you asked me, which was like, what do we think the role of fear is? I think it's strong. I think it plays a big role.
So here's
Either
a question.
way.
So here's what comes up for me, right?
Yeah.
And we've both been in this. We've both been in this circumstance. So here you are, you're on this beach, this tropical island. It's beautiful. Like in a lot of ways, like your life is wonderful, right? So great, so
Yeah.
good. I've been in that context, right? I'm in Japan. I'm training extensively in martial arts. I'm doing all this, and yet, so it's like our life's wonderful, and yet at the same time, we still have a desire to have transformation.
Yeah.
And there's a fear related to that.
Mm.
So you had asked earlier, like, what's the difference between the person who wants transformation and who doesn't want it?
Mm.
What I'm curious about is that what do you think um, what do you think causes you to, my life is good, I have all these good things, and yet I still desire this transformation? Why?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. And it's one I think I've been asking myself recently because this whole playing big and playing at your edge, it can get exhausting sometimes, and it's and
Yeah.
sometimes I think maybe I would be happy to just make a couple of $1,000 a month, and just pay the rent and go on holiday, and I guess, well, it makes me think of something, because I asked this question, why do some people transform their lives and others don't, to Jason and Steve on their show. And Steve was saying, which I just loved, some people will say, why do I need to change? I'm good as I am. And he talks about the inevitability of it. It's like a flower half coming out and saying, well, why do I need to fully bloom? It's like, of course it's going to fully bloom. That's what we do. Transformation is, well, this is a question that I'm playing with. Is transformation inevitable? Anyway.
That is awesome. So I think what it is there's an it sounds like there's like an underlying understanding. So for me, I guess what it is I'm hearing this is that I'm aware that I'm a half-bloomed flower, right? And I love being the flower that I am. I really like it. It's a damn good flower. But at the same time, um, I'm half-bloomed. Why the fuck would I want to stay half-bloomed? And so being aware of that, because when I think about it, right, so the different things, the different steps and things I'm doing in my life, over the next year, I want to train 1,000 hours in Aikido, traveling all around the country. Okay? I've joined joined 4PC with Rich that you know about, with that group. And it's like, sometimes I'm like, why do I do these things? Like, why do I feel like Why do why don't I just chill the fuck out? And then the thing is though, is it's not coming from this space of like, oh my God, I'm not worthy and I'm not good enough and I need to be better than I am. It comes from this space of like, oh gosh, I like myself and I really like myself and I really, 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 really love my life. And at the same time, what if I could love it even more?
Mm.
And what if I could exist even like if I could exist totally different? Like what if after doing this Aikido and showing up and meeting people and just be able to feel that sense of groundedness in my world, that it just inspires me. Um, and I don't know. It sounds to me that one of the contexts that allows for you and I at least, or I can speak for myself, that has me still desiring transformation is a sense of a big just a sense of huge possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking now as I think back to who I've always been, I guess, even when I what I kind of, in a sense, I almost think about pre-transformation and post-transformation in my life because I did undergo quite a big transformation. Um, but one thing that I think has just been a running theme throughout my life is this kind of persistence. This, I don't know, just desire to move forward, to get on, and to um, I don't know what it is. And so as you were talking, I was thinking, is it something you're born with? Are you born with, you know, the condition that you and I clearly have? I mean, when you talked earlier, it reminded me of a friend I used to have who said to me when I think I was doing my second 10-day detox without food because I was like in this whole spiritual, I'm gonna, and she said, why do you always have to take everything to an extreme? You always have to like, you can't just go for a run, you have to run a marathon or you have to, climb a mountain and I remember, it's like, is it just part of who I am? Was I born that way? I don't know. Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah. The first thought that comes up for me is one of the things that has continually happened throughout my life, and this exactly your experience that you're sharing, is it's because I've had it repeatedly said to me that the misunderstanding of what I'm trying to do and what I'm looking to do. And so, remember, it was about 5 years ago. I was on a call. I was with a group of people, and just within it, we'd start the call by talking about how we're doing and what we're excited about, whatever. And I was always like, I always had a goal. I always had something I was going for. I remember one of the women on the call said, "Izzy, do you think you'll ever be happy with just what you have?" And I remember sitting there and going, she has no idea where I'm coming from. Like she doesn't understand it. Like
Yeah.
because she thinks that I feel unhappy and that's why I'm doing things. I'm trying to make up for something. And you go, and it's a misunderstanding of um, where I think where I was coming from. And I think and so because I've heard that so many times, I have at times struggled with it. So I have at times been like, why do I have to do all these things and why can't I just be happy? But then it's funny when I'll say things like, why can't I just be happy with this, this, and this? And it's like, well, actually, I am happy with this, this, and this, right? What's coming up for you?
I tell you what's coming up for me is thinking about the fact that how would I put this? That there are some people. So that my fascination is it's not necessarily the people. Why do some people desire transformation and other people don't? It's like why do some people achieve transformation and others who desire it don't? And I know you said at the beginning maybe they don't want it enough. But I remember, for example, a big period of my life desiring transformation and it not happening for me. I was full of kind of like goals and ambitions and dreams, and I always fell short. I was kind of trapped with negative habits and addictions and drinking too much and smoking too much, and so I always had visions of this transformed life, and I really struggled for a long time. So sometimes I find myself analyzing what was it that kind of changed, because it was quite dramatic. You know, it was kind of in the space of 5 years, I gave up alcohol, I gave up smoking, I completely changed. I just completely changed my life. Everything changed. My relationships, the people in my life, the work I did, where I lived, everything. And so I'm kind of fascinated by the people who desire it but don't, because I think, what is it? What conditions could be created? What is it that's missing from you? You know, and you know, not in a kind of they're lacking something, but what's missing in order for you to kind of, you know, transition into transformation. I think that's what really fascinates me. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, I think what pops up for in my head is that your example, you go, okay, well, for so long I was desiring transformation. Had goals, I had ambitions, I had these things, but it wasn't happening for me.
Yeah.
It wasn't transforming. But what's funny about it is that we actually don't know that that wasn't part of the entire transformation, because
Mm.
you did transform, right? Like, you have experienced transformation. And so the thing is like, well, what if that actually was actually not preventing you from transforming? What if that actually was part of the
Yeah.
transformational journey?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I will say that I do think that it seems to me that it's almost like there's a transformation muscle where it's like the beginning process of transformation can sometimes be it can sometimes be, it's like this slow and slow and slow, and so we don't even see it as transformation. Then all of a sudden, all that work, all the effort, everything we've gone through, all the challenges, all of a sudden, sometimes we just see this exponential result.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, we're like, the hell was I doing the last 4 years? Like,
Yeah.
how the hell did I not have that the previous 4 years? Um, and then in reality, but what's actually happened is, it's like, well, actually, what happened over the last 2 months or 3 months or a year or 6 months is as a result of the foundation that we built in that previous period of time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that what that brings up for me, one idea that I think about is struggle. You know, so this kind of need to change. You know, when it's like we both described, when we did change our lives, it was like the reality we were in was too painful to to stay in. Even though I do see a lot of people stay in painful situations, but I wonder what the role of struggle is. You know, what the role of hitting rock bottom. It's like do or die. You know, I have to change or just give up. You know,
yeah.
I do wonder about that.
Yeah. You know, one of the interesting things about it is, when I think back to this, say, 2015, um, it's interesting because when I think about 2015, like I go, I think about it like the feeling in my body is really good. But yet, when I really think about it, there's a lot of struggle that I had in
Mm.
2015. It's a lot of insecurity, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of questioning myself. But what's interesting is, when I think back to it, and I go through my journals in 2015, and I just think about it, I remember literally like sitting outside staring at trees going, oh, I'm feeling insecure. I'm feeling like half a man. What does that feel like? And just letting the flow of energy through my body.
Mm.
And what was so interesting about that experience of doing that, um, that struggle, like, that's a deep
Mm.
struggle for me. And what was so interesting, though, about being willing to be in that struggle is it allowed me to grow so much, and I gained
Mm.
so much from that. Um, and they're definitely, in my life, when I have had the least, I'd say the least levels of growth is when I have fought the hardest to anything I could to not feel struggle.
Mm.
Um, and the more I pushed, the more I just do anything I can to not struggle. And that often, just because struggle is real, it happens.
Yeah.
Um, when I do that, when I've pushed it away, unwilling to just experience it, to be with it, to grow from it, to learn from it, to reflect on it.
Yeah.
What is this communicating to me? That's I definitely see it, you know, in working with clients. A lot of times it's interesting because they'll just be like, oh, you know, well, I'm just really stressed out about this, but that's that. And they'll want to go on to something else.
Mm,
It's like, well, whoa, whoa, let's be in the stress. Let's
yeah,
exist in it. Let's find it, and let's discover what that is communicating.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, because I wonder how much of it is actually like acknowledging that the struggle is there. I remember when a real catalyst for my transformation was reaching a point where I was like, oh, holy shit, I can't do this on my own. Like, I need support. I'm not holding it together. And for a long time, I think I was like in this space of denying this. Well, I mean, I knew struggle was around, but I wasn't really acknowledging the scale of the struggle. And when I finally did, then it was like, okay, now I have to do something about it. I can't. And I wonder if it's the same with things like, talking about the money story. I know when I've had in growing my business, real growth is when I've it's come after a period of really struggling with something, because I guess that's how you master it. How else do you unlock the code of making money, for example, or getting fit or losing weight if you don't really struggle with it, first? I
mhm.
don't know. That's what comes up for me.
Yeah. You know what I keep wondering, and that's why like you'll see like I'm kind of like I'm pulling out my journal and like flipping pages because I have a desire to because what we're doing is there seems to be certain character qualities,
Mm,
right? Certain things that we're identifying here that essentially like what is the conditions
mm,
that lead to transformation?
yeah.
Um, for me, without question, the awareness, and it's a little bit paradoxical. Um, because there's so much in the personal development space and stuff that like you are amazing and you have to believe that you are incredible and the best thing ever. And I think for me, actually, one of the biggest, most powerful discoveries and what has helped me so much grow is realizing like that it's this kind of paradoxical relationship between, um, yeah, I like myself and I can't do this on my own.
Mm,
I, I don't know, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm a good person and I got some great things going for me. Um, but I need some support. I do need that. Um, I was really interested in me. I had a different, having different conversations. I spoke with an individual recently that is really, kind of struggling, just trying to figure out direction in their life and what they want to do. And it was interesting because had the conversation, just was talking with them, and it was a friend from many many years ago. Went out and grabbed coffee. It was just very interesting to kind of hear them, and they're kind of going off and blah blah blah. And I was sitting there, I'm going, God, they're fucking going off. Like they, like I'm not the world's fucking smartest guy, but I get this stuff. People pay me a lot of fucking money to help them with these specific things, and I
mm,
have moved to the other side of the world. I used to have a professional career, doing all these things. I'm like, it would just make sense to me, like that this person should maybe ask me a couple things, like at least ask some questions about my story. But they're just going off, and I'm just like, huh. And I was like, oh, I didn't think too much of it
mm,
until I recently had a conversation. This guy, he's now written multiple books. He's fucking multimillionaire. Fucking this fucking amazing, so fucking just killing it, and just so inspiring, so incredible. And we get in the conversation, and we're talking. He's asking me about me and doing this, and he's asking me about my story about moving to Japan, doing martial arts, and he's like, "Oh my god, that's so amazing!" And he's asking me all these questions, and like so curious about, and I'm sitting there going, why are
mm,
you asking me stuff? Like, and I sat there, and then I was so fascinated by him. I'm asking him all these questions, and I walked away from those two conversations, and it took some time, but I realized on a walk, like, it's I bet that guy always showed up like that,
mm,
and that his willingness to he like just saw that, and he was like, it was so, and the thing that was so interesting to me is it was so inspiring to me to just see how he showed up, and it blew my mind. that it's like he doesn't need anything from me. This guy's killing it. Why the hell is he asking me questions? This other person who's like drowning doesn't even see, and I bet that I would dare to say this person who probably is drowning probably has just, he's probably resisting, all the opportunities in his life that could actually support him.
Do you think that vulnerability is a thing there? Like, is the guy who didn't ask questions afraid to be? Because to say, listen, man, can you give me any advice here, or like, what would you recommend, or that takes vulnerability.
I think that is a great, yeah. I know for me, I remember before I began working with a coach, I remember having thoughts to myself going like, what the hell is wrong with me? I can't believe I'm thinking of even hiring. Like, I can't hire a coach, like a coach that needs a coach. Like, shouldn't I be able to figure this shit out on my own? Like, why should I have to have any support? Like that, I like had shame around it. Um, yeah. I totally think that. Okay, let's do that. I'm curious about this. So, okay, so I think vulnerability is totally a character quality.
Yeah.
What other things that we have identified? So, vulnerability. Um,
Curiosity, I took from the other guy.
cool. Okay. Curiosity. Um,
Some level of belief that transformation is possible or a better life.
cool. Okay, so yeah, a belief in a better life.
Yeah. I
Belief
guess,
in a
would you
better.
call that optimism
Um,
or
it
hope?
maybe hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, like right. I would ask. Yeah, I would actually call it hope. Um, vulnerability, curiosity, hope. Um, I would put in there. I think vulnerability. I think what also is there's a humility.
Expand on that a tiny bit.
So, so one of the things that is also so interesting to me, right, is that um, my mom. I went out to lunch with my mom the other day, and she knows I like to go to these seminars and these events, and she was saying, so Ismael, when you go to these events, are you able to? Is it pretty easy to spot the people that are doing like really really well? They're successful in the finding ways, like because I know that you're always like you love having relationships with people that are really doing some cool things. And I kind of thought about it, and I was like, I'm like I'm learning how to, but the thing about it, I said it's really easy to spot the people that are full of shit, but it's a lot, but it is more difficult to identify the people that are really really doing well. And when I say doing well, I mean coming from a really great place, making a really big impact in the world, deep integrity. They like themselves. They wake up in the morning, they feel good, and they make a meaningful impact. They're creating substantial financial wealth, um, doing cool, amazing things. And my mom was that's interesting, and she asked me about it. I said, well, why is that? And I go, because the people that are full of shit, when I talk with them, they spend the whole conversation trying to prove to me how incredible they are. And you feel it. You feel it in their energy. They're always trying to kind of prove something. They're just saying stuff where you're like, and it's sometimes very subtle. And they don't realize they're doing it, but they feel like they have to prove something. And that's a very different. There's one guy that I had this conversation with this event, and he was just so kind of calm and relaxed and just kind of just real interested and kind of da da da. And he just kind of looked like this normal guy. Just looked like a normal guy, and he was just kind of calm, and it was interesting, good conversation. And then I later go on Facebook. I thought this guy's a fucking like hugely sought after like intimacy relationship coach, fantastic impact on people. Huge. And I was like, I talked with him. I had no clue.
Yeah.
And it's because he was so humble and had no need to prove anything that even the questions I would ask him about, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I got a couple projects that I'm working on that I feel pretty excited about. And, but it's good. There's some challenges that I'm facing. That's how entrepreneurialism is. Never would have known. Never. And that was also, and so it was very humbling for me to be like, oh man, like how am I showing up? Right?
Yeah.
Like how am I showing up if I'm not present enough and I'm making judgments on people? Um, and yeah, what's coming up?
Just, well, it's interesting because this humility is part of what you just described. And then as you describe the person who is trying to prove themselves, the word that came into my mind is self-worth. And that was on my list as well in terms of like potential conditions, like to have some level of self-worth. Because if you don't, then you do things like that. You're kind of trying to prove yourself, and and also I think that's a huge barrier for a lack of self worth is a huge barrier for transformation.
I yeah, I totally. I get the word that comes up for me is self-esteem.
Yeah,
Because I guess in self-worth, self-esteem, I think they're
they're pretty
same thing,
similar.
right? Because yeah, and it's because I guess that at least the way that I've heard self-esteem defined is how much you like yourself. And what's interesting is that I've noticed that, so when I went to Europe, it totally shocked me because the thing that came up for me, like the biggest discovery I had in that time was over the course of whatever the period of time I was there, like a month and a half or so, I was reflecting on what happened for me there. Like, what did I learn? How to grow? And I realized, I was like, I feel like I like myself more now. I was like, that's weird because I thought I already did like myself. But what was interesting about it is that the more I like myself, the more I like myself, the more I can like other people.
Yeah.
And because it is, because one of the things I noticed is that, being around different people, that sometimes it's really nice to be around someone that likes you, that's curious about you, that's fascinated by you, that it's nice. And I thought, and I go, huh, it's like the more I like myself, the more I can like them. And also, the more I like myself, the less I'm affected by kind of their responses to
Yeah.
me. Um, I remember back when I began my teaching career, and it was very, very difficult for me when I was in my early 20s. And I was really struggling, insecurities, doubts. And I remember one of my friends was in his acting career, and he recently got an amazing gig. It was incredible, like phenomenal gig, totally. And that was his dream. And I remember him going to his place and him sharing this with me, and me inside feeling like a jealousy and it was I'm not recalling the exact word, but it was that. It was this feeling of like, and I remember being so bothered by myself and being like, why can't I be happy for him?
Yeah.
Like, why it bothers me that I like, it's like I don't want this to happen for him. Like, why I'm like, if I reached a point in my life where I don't want other people to be happy, like, why can't I just feel good that he feels good? I feel worse that he feels good. And at the time, I didn't understand it, but it was because I was struggling with my self-esteem,
Yeah.
my self-worth.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So we've like I mean I've got more on my list in terms of one of the things that Steve Chandler said in the answer to the question I asked, for the same question I've been asking you, in terms of a condition for transformation. He talked about openness, and I think maybe, is that the same as curiosity, or do you think there's a difference between being open? And openness, I think, for me, directly relates to a lot of what Michael Neal talks about in terms of like fresh thinking, fresh perspective, like, a new space for a new insight to occur. I kind of see
Yeah.
those as quite similar. How important
Yeah.
do you think that is?
Yeah. I think openness is, I think that's kind of like the idea of, it's just, it's kind of like the idea. So one of the ways I came up with the idea, right, to travel around the country studying Aikido, um, I was talking with a coach, and he was coaching me, and one of the things he was asking me, what's your impossible goal? What's your impossible goal? And so I said some things. And he was like, "That's wonderful, but that's not impossible." And I was like, "Oh, he's right. It's not impossible." And all of a sudden, my thinking started to get bigger. And so then, before I knew it, I had shifted from, "Oh, I want to share my story in front of an audience and do some Aikido like earlier in the day and do that in one day," to like, what if I like traveled around the like entire country and entire world, like being around the best Aikido teachers, and like not only like learning from them, but actually helping them to build and expand their business to be able to spread the message of Aikido even further and farther. And all of a sudden, as I started to go there, like all of a sudden I started open to it. I was like, whoa, that, I don't know how I could do that. That sounds crazy. It sounds nuts. Da, da. But then all of a sudden it was just like, whoa, like I don't need to know how, but I'm just open to thought. And then soon thereafter, by having that openness, like, I mean, I have to credit that conversation to being to a lot of where I'm stepping into now, where it's like now I am traveling and training in Aikido, traveling across all of America, literally going like, I'm going to find the best teachers in the country, and then sharing it on a bigger scale with the purpose of going, I know there's something bigger and richer here. And the 1,000 hours to me of that, it seems like I would not have been open to it. I think that as I became more open, all of a sudden I started to see possibilities that I never did before.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure you've had what's coming up in my mind, and I'm sure you've had this experience as a coach. Like when you've got on a call with somebody and they want your support with a specific thing, and at every point they just close it down. You know, it's like, no, I couldn't do that because, you know, and it's just almost an impossible conversation because they're in no way open to a different way of being, you know, because one of the things I think I see a lot with people is they want the transformation, they want the results of transformation, but they don't want to change what they're doing. You know, if you want and I know I've gone from having a life to having a completely transformed life, and I had to change everything. I mean, literally, I changed how what I did on a day-to-day basis. I changed the people I spent my time with. I changed the books I read. I changed my job, my country, I had to change everything in order to have the scale of transformation that I feel I've achieved. And I think a lot of people are they desire the end result, but they're closed when it comes to, you know, to looking at what
Yes.
they could possibly change on a day-to-day basis in order to achieve it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Are you remembering conversations right now?
No, I'm just thinking about, well, I'm actually thinking about kind of myself and kind of like when I've made changes and things like that. Um, but also that simple thing of like, yes, there's the thinking of individuals or experiences where someone says they want something, they want this desired result,
Mm.
but then, and I'd always go back to of like, I don't actually think they really do want it. They think they want it. They really do think they want it sometimes. Um, what's actually coming up for me is I'm thinking about um, myself in that context of saying I'm wanting something, but then not doing anything about it
Yeah.
versus then over a time actually doing something about it. I can kind of I can share that, and then we can try and dissect it.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm thinking about in particular, and as you know, it's something I worked on a lot over the last really 7, 8 months, is just my relationships with women.
Mm.
You know, and so when I first, if someone would have asked me, I think when I first kind of came across this, I'd say about 8 months ago, when all of a sudden um, I became aware once again of the woman species. And as I first became aware again of like, whoa, I became aware, but at the same time I was terrified.
Yeah.
It was like this strange feeling inside, and it was like, okay, I kind of want to start talking with women, but I kind of like I don't know, like it just was, and I didn't, and what had to happen for me, and then it's went from that where literally I remember about 8 months ago as I became aware of this, and then getting support from mentors and everything, and people around. But I remember as I began to be aware that it was a huge challenge for me, and I began to be intentional. I remember I was walking, I was in Bali, I looked up and, did yoga, and there was a woman, and she was very attractive. And I looked up, there's a million attractive women in Bali and everywhere, actually, and look up and I see her, and I remember going, wow, she's attractive. And I remember having huge shame. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Stop looking at her. She'll know. And like, I like didn't want to. And I was literally like terrified, right? So terrified from that experience. And so I go from that experience, right? So from there's that experience to now present day, where if I'm with a woman and I feel attracted to her, regardless of the circumstance, I'm able to very comfortably like just go, I feel sexually attracted to. Or I can just show with my body, but before I couldn't. And so, and the question is why, what happened there? Why did that change occur? And I remember at first when I was exploring it, I just was like, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want to talk to her. I understand this is important in my life, and I know I do want a girlfriend or something at some point in time in my far future, whatever, but I don't want to have to do anything about it. Yeah. I don't, and I'm not exactly, I don't know exactly sometimes I wonder, like, what switched inside that made me willing to take those initial steps to get the ball moving.
A couple of things coming up for me. Well, one is the role of fear again. Like, did it become less scary? Like, and again, I would also argue, was it that there was a part of you that didn't want it, or was it just there was a part of you that was terrified of it, even though you want it? And what's coming up as well is, what's the role, was commitment, was making a commitment to doing something about it part of it for you? Like, I know for me, for example, when, like, I have this thing where I've got to kind of like do some real work on my health, because I have this health condition and I have to change my diet, and I want it because I want to be healthier, but I'm terrified of what it means in terms of just enjoying life and letting go of foods that I love. And I got to a place where I thought, okay, I've got to have this in my life. So what's missing? It just started to become really clear. What's missing is commitment. Even though I want it, and I'm scared. There's a part of me that doesn't. I don't want to go on this restrictive diet that's going to kind of mean I can't go out and eat tapas, on a Friday night with my boyfriend. So, but I made a commitment because I thought, I've got to get better. I've got to heal this condition. So I'm committing to this, even though I'm scared of it, and there's a part of me that doesn't want it. Did that happen to you with the women thing, or do you think it was something else?
Yeah. What comes up for me is the concept of fear of loss versus desire for gain.
Yeah.
Right. So when I think back to it, when I remember the experiences where I would literally see a woman and have so much, like, just so much tension, it's because there was like this massive fear, just totally, of like, oh my God, what if she knows that I'm looking at her? There's no way in hell she'll feel anything back to me. And even if she did, like, I have no idea what to even do with it. And it's this huge fear of rejection, pain, just all like, oh my God, if she pushed me, what does that say about me as a man? Like, all these things, right? And there's this huge fear. And so this concept, and yet somewhere inside, I did realize there was something to be gained in the process. I knew there was something to be gained. That's why, but at the same time, it was just so intense. And I'd say now the experience, if I'm with a woman and enjoying the experience, whatever, it's real easy for me to just say, like, I want to be around you again. And the difference is that when I think about it in that recent context, what happened when I think of a recent circumstance that happened a few days ago, was that there was no story in my head about it. So there wasn't really a fear of loss, because it's like, this is what I feel. Like, I want to see you again. And that's like, wherever you're coming from is cool. Like, if you don't want to see me again, like, that's fine. You know, like, yeah, be cool to see you again. It's cool to have pepper jack cheese on my turkey sandwich, right?
Yeah.
But the same, but it, if she chooses not to, it doesn't mean I'm half a man. It doesn't mean I'm not a good person. It doesn't mean that these things. And so all of a sudden, the desire for gain, it's like, well, I mean, if I say it to her, like, what if I tell her, like, I want to see her again, and then we do, like, what if we do? Like, that'd be amazing. You know, I had an experience. I don't know, maybe a month ago or whatever. I was talking with this woman. And I was like, and I just had this huge desire to, like, I just wanted to be in nature and be in mountains with her. And so I just said, I was like, I just want to go into the mountains with you and hike in nature. And I knew what I was saying in my head. It was funny because I was saying it. I was like, there's no fucking way she's going to say yes to this. Like, that'd be crazy. Why the hell would she say yes to this? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, and, but in my head, but I also said, but what if she does?
Yeah.
What if she does say yes? And it was interesting afterward. And she ended up saying yes. She ended up being like, yeah, let's do it. And I thought afterwards, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting because I actually didn't expect her to say yes to it. Um, but the reason I did it was because of it's that desire for gain versus the fear of loss.
Yeah.
And because there wasn't a fear of loss, I was like, well, she's probably there's no chance how she's gonna want to do this anyways. And everything is still good for me and everything is still good for her regardless. And I feel it and it doesn't really impact our relationship because it's like, it's fine either which way.
Mm.
You know, we're cool. We're cool either which way. I'm just telling her what I want. And that willingness, and because the thought in my head wasn't, what if it doesn't work? It was like, it doesn't, that I'm fine.
Yeah.
But it was like, what if it does?
So has that come with time though? Has that come with, because I'm thinking this is a recent example and I know you've been working on it for a while. So like, can you think back to the first time, like post your declaration or your realization that this was a thing for you back in Bali in May? Do you remember like the first time you face the fear, I guess? I'm just, when, you know, because there's that whole thing
Yes,
about facing fear and then it gets easier and easier each time.
totally.
Where were you then with the fear of loss and the idea of gain?
Yeah, that's such a great point. So what it was for me, right? So because I think about actually an experience in which I didn't even put out any type of invitation or anything, but I was kind of talking to a woman a little bit, and I sent her a message on Facebook, and I was like terrified to just send her the message, like just send her that, and it was just this like, and she didn't respond for whatever a few days, and I remember even to myself being like, I'm not checking Facebook. I'm not going to go on Facebook because I knew that if I were to go on Facebook and to see that she had not sent a message, I would just feel like just such anxiety and tension. And so what happened for me, I remember at that point in time was one of the things that happened was she ended up responding maybe 4 or 5 whatever days later. But I remember all the stories I had created around it. And I remember going like, just I'd created an entire reality, right? I'd created this entire reality around it, about who I was and my identity, and then becoming aware of that. When I became aware of like, wait a second, I had created an entire reality here as to why she has not responded and why she never will respond.
Yeah.
And then she did end up responding. And it was like, and what I was able to do at the time is I documented it all. So I ended up journaling and writing about it and going, whoa, like, what did I feel was going on? Like, what did I think was reality? And it was, you know, I'm gross, I'm ugly, I'm not likable, blah, blah, blah. Just so many things that I'd created. And it was like, but it wasn't true. And it, and so it started to make me go, what else am I telling myself that's preventing me from from going for
Yeah.
things? Um, and that was so incredibly powerful because then I was able to start playing with that exact same thing in business, playing with it in traveling and going to Aikido dojos. You know, I discovered I had a fear of going to Aikido dojos because I thought that people would think I had shitty Aikido. Right? Like, where did that come from? I don't know. But so I had this fear of going now, and but then I could witness it. Right. So I guess there's this process of, Do you find that for yourself? Do you witness your struggles?
Yeah, yeah. More and
What does that
more.
do? What does that do for you?
It's liberating, I think, in a way. You know, I was talking to someone today actually about how when I used to speak in public, you know, if I had to give a presentation in my old life, in my old career, and things like that, the anxiety that would kind of consume me, you know, days before and up until the moment and throughout, you know, it was kind of like sheer terror. But I was trying to avoid the fear. You know, I was trying to kind of just push it away. It's like, you know, just I just want to do anything but think about how stressed out I am about this, how anxious I feel about it. And now what happens is I you know, in a situation like I ran a women's circle in our house in Valencia the other week, and now I don't feel that level of anxiety at all because I've done it a lot of times. But I think, well, I don't think it's that I've done a lot of times. I think it's that I'm completely comfortable with being scared. And the more comfortable I am with the emotion being around in the same room, the less intense it feels. Because then it's just like, okay, fear is hanging about and I don't have to deal with him, you know, I can just let him do his thing in the corner and carry on regardless. Whereas before it would grip me, but I'd at the same time as being gripped by fear, I'd be denying it, you know. It's like I remember very much that feeling of like, don't be so ridiculous. Don't why are you so scared? You know, maybe you felt that with the women thing. It's like, why are you freaking out about something so easy? I don't do that now. I don't question my fear. I kind of just accept it as inevitable. It's like, oh, fear's here. Of course it is. And that's cool. I can still do this and be scared. And then I'm just so much less scared. That's been hugely transformational for me.
So this is interesting. So here's the what's coming up for me is that so let's say if we're making a plant, right? So we're making or planting a plant. We do it. You put nutrients and water and everything, and it just kind of happens. It grows,
Yeah.
and it grows. If we take it, and we just go, oh wow, that was incredible. Just by chance, I have no idea how that even worked, and we take no time to think about it or whatever, then we actually it's not sustainable,
Yeah.
right? It's not but in reality, we actually did this amazing job to build this plant, and we have so much incredible opportunity to learn from what just unfolded. And
Yeah.
literally, by just witnessing that process of that plant, we become aware of, okay, well, what are the soil conditions that are actually happening? Because we can recreate those soil conditions. What's the water that we use? What are the nutrients that we use? What was the amount of sunlight? What time of year was it?
Yeah.
What was the season? And as the more we witness it, the more sustainable it becomes, and that actually becomes the foundation in which we do the next plan. We can make it even better now,
Yeah.
right? And so it seems to be that there's this kind of the underlying concept of what, because both you and I are talking about is this process of, I guess, witnessing our own experience
Yeah.
and then learning from it. Um, I mean, one of the craziest things that I've discovered in the process of my relationships with women is it's like I can just if I'm willing to say what I feel, maybe nothing happens from it, but maybe something does.
Yeah.
And just because I think nothing will, what I think in these particular contexts of being like, there's no chance in hell this woman is going to be willing to go out with me. There's no chance in hell. That's not relevant to the outcome.
Mm.
As long as I don't get lost in that thought. You know, if I'm lost in that thought, my energy changes. But if I'm just like, oh, the only reason I've been able to discover that is because I've intentionally done things where I've said explicitly to myself, um, like, I don't think she will say yes, and that's why I'm going to do it.
Mm.
Saw a woman the other day that she's beautiful. I've known her for many, many years. She's beautiful. And I think she's a wonderful person. And I just saw her very quickly and briefly. And afterwards I was like, God, I want to see her again. Like how, and it's like, I really want to see her again. And I was like, but I'm like, I kind of blew it or I didn't ask her. But next time, how would I make it better? And I started to slow down. I said, well, wait a second. Why can't, like, what if I can't see her again? What if I I was like, what would I, like, if I were to see her again right now, how would I do it? And I just realized, I was like, oh, I can send her a message. Like, I do have, she's on Facebook. I could just send her a message. So, and it literally was like, okay, I'm not sending this to create an outcome. I'm not doing this because I need it. I'm actually doing this for the sole reason that I'm sure she will say that I'm sure that there's just no chance in hell of this happening. Um, and I want to be someone who goes for things that I don't think will happen. Like if I make a practice of that for my entire life, I will do amazing things. So I did it with, so that was the intention behind it. And so I did, I just sent her a message that was like, I want to see you. I said it was something like, I feel called to ask you for coffee and I don't know why, but I do. And just, that was it. And pretty much like, are you down? And I just assumed whatever. And then how these things tend to turn out, she's like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, okay, the fuck. But then it's the same thing in business, right? It's that same thing in business, like, here's an amazing, inspiring person that I'm doing coaching work with, and be fucking incredible to work with them. They're so inspiring, so incredible. I think we create some incredible things. The fuck would they want to work with me? Like, that's not even a relevant thought. Like, it's just like, all right, I'm inspired. I have a crazy idea. What's that? Why don't you come be here, live with me for the next 5 days? It'd be $10,000. And it's like you're putting it out for the same concept of like, that is, and showing up like that, just being like, I don't know what they'll say. I don't think they're gonna say yes, but what if they do? Like, how amazing could that be for them? How amazing could that be for me? Same thing for showing up in life, right? I have no idea. Can I train 1,000 hours over the next year of my life doing Aikido? I have no fucking idea how I'm going to do all that. That's a lot, balance and do everything. But I'm going for it, doing it. Sudden emailing dojos, reaching out, putting in my planner, scheduling everything, showing up for training, and it's like there's an energy that starts to be created with this that creates which creates transformation.
Yeah, I keep in my mind keep coming back to the word commitment. Like I don't know if that's what you're feeling, but there's a difference. And Steve Chandler explains it brilliantly. It's that I use the same example all the time with people. It's that, like, when you book a plane ticket for a flight to a $5,000 holiday in Costa Rica or something, and someone says to you, oh, can you do this thing in this week? Can we set up this meeting? And you're like, well, no, I'm going to be in Costa Rica. And it's like, well, it's not for 3 months. Things might change. And it's like, no, I'm going to be in Costa Rica. There's no element of doubt. It's just like and with you, and I hear you talking, it's like the commitment is to like, when you were talking about the women, what you were saying is, my commitment is to, well, how I heard it was play at my edge, do things that feel uncomfortable. That's your commitment. And so you're going to bring that to your work relationships. You're going to bring it to the situation with women. It's like, okay, this feels uncomfortable. And I wonder if that's another thing. It's that leaning into seeing the edge, feeling the discomfort, and knowing that there's some gold there. There's always gold if we go to that place,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely think um, there's a huge commitment for me to be in my edge.
Yeah.
And I think that's just come from kind of like, that's discovering about what I want. Right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's a piece of transformation too. Maybe it's time where it's like being aware that sometimes people say, oh, I don't know what I want, which is never actually true. Because, like, okay, you may not know the external tangible of what you want, but you know how you want to feel.
Yeah.
You know that. You know you want to feel fulfilled, you want to feel excited, you want to feel engaged, you want to feel purposeful, meaningful, connected, impactful. You know that. Mm-hmm. And so I think becoming more and more aware of that, as I become more aware of what I want to feel, I've just learned that I feel incredibly liberated when I'm able to be in my edge, and then all of a sudden I discover, oh my God, I was walking every single day in my life when I'd see a beautiful woman and I would want to talk to her so badly, but I was so terrified I wouldn't. And so then I did nothing about it, and that's how I existed. That's what I did. And so it's like, it's so liberating to know that I can, and like, no matter what happens, life's awesome. And then to be able to show up like that with business,
Yeah.
to be able to show up with that with my clients, to be able to support them to do that, to be able to do that with what I desire in my life, to just knowing where it's like, and every time I do it, every time I find an edge and be in that edge and just sit in it and then experience and witness it, it's like growth happens, because it's like, oh my God, I was so terrified to do that, or I was so tense to do that, and yet I'm totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa. And it's like a lightning. There's a lightning every single time.
Yeah. I always think that once you do it that first time, once you engage in battle with fear, you know, it's kind of like you do the thing with fear and you come out relatively unscathed. It's kind of, you have a knowing. Now, I'm aware of time, so I want to ask one final question, which is, so what we've done is, I feel like maybe you're on the same page as me with my hypothesis that there are like certain conditions under which transformation is more likely to occur.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with
Yes.
that? So
Yes.
do you think that it could benefit people to look more deeply at cultivating those conditions, like rather than like going for the transformation? You know, it's like trying to do the transformative thing, that maybe there's some work to be done to cultivate those conditions. I mean, what do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would actually say, and we didn't hit upon this a lot, but I think if we listen to the undertone, a lot of it, and even the nature of like kind of our relationship, and if we, which was how with us, to me, one of the things, one of the conditions that is the most powerful to cultivate transformation is relationships. Surrounding ourselves by people playing at higher levels, and people doing crazy things that inspire us, it normalizes those things.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
100%. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've got down on my list external support, you know, in terms of coaches, you know, peers, groups. But I think that's really key, is spending time with people who are doing things that feel, I want to say, almost like magic. You know, you see some people and they seem, I mean, I thought just before our call, I thought to myself, God, if I was to rewind time like 3 or 4 years, and I thought I was about to get on a call and have this like recorded conversation with Izzy, I'd be freaking out. And now it's like, oh, it's Izzy. I can't wait to see how he is, you know? So there is a thing there, definitely, in terms of realizing that even people who are insanely successful are just normal people and have fears and doubts and insecurities and all of that stuff.
Yeah. 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 And then we realize, like, wait, if they're feeling all those things and I feel those things, and wait, like, we're not different.
Yeah, yeah,
Then it's like, wait, that means I can do what they're doing. And when they say I can do these things, I can. And yeah, it's powerful.
yeah. I love it. I don't know if you can hear the bells. I think they're telling us it's time. It's time. So amazing conversation as always. I feel like we could talk for like 10 hours on this subject, but thank you very much for like playing with this subject with me, because I think it's, I don't, yeah, I feel very strongly called to kind of go into this, you know? And so you're the first person I've spoken to, and I couldn't think of anyone else I would want to, you know, I was like, I need to know what Izzy thinks about this subject. This is like, you know,
Yeah.
so thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.